Welcome to my new video series called How to Implement. This series will focus on new vehicles and study properly how it could be added in the most ideal way. I plan to do this regularly over the few coming days just to beat the buzzer when it comes to upcoming content, because Gaijin can speedrun a bit when it comes to technology. In this case, we're doing the MiG-29. The MiG-29 is a really sought after aircraft, and with the announcement of Tier 7 aviation, I feel Gaijin has come a step closer to realizing the dream of flying a MiG-29. So I'm taking the opportunity to jump the gun and try to talk about how we can actually get this thing in game without breaking air battles for good. Please be aware that first and foremost I am an Air RB player, which will very much influence the suggestions I make for this video and other videos that will come in the future. The MiG-29 is a fighter developed by the Mikoyan Design Bureau in the 1970s, but the need for a new aircraft that would eventually become the MiG-29 traces far back as the late 60s when the FX program led to the development of the F-15 Eagle. Work began on the Advanced Frontline Fighter in 1972 with the Central Aerohydrodynamic Institute, or TAGI, worked with Sukhoi on the aerodynamics of this aircraft. However, it became apparent that two different aircraft were necessary when the United States developed the F-16 Fighting Falcon. The program was then split into the Advanced Frontline Fighter and Lightweight Advanced Frontline Fighter program, with the Lightweight program being assigned to Mikoyan and the Advanced Frontline Fighter being assigned to Sukhoi, which will eventually be the Su-27. The MiG-29, upon introduction, formed the backbone of the Soviet Air Forces and continues to serve in the same fashion in the Russian Air Force in upgraded capacities. There are three major variants of the MiG-29 that I can see being added into War Thunder at the moment. The MiG-29 Product 912 variant, the MiG-29M or the Product 915 variant, and the MiG-29K, the navalized version of the MiG-29. In order to create a semblance of progression and not add a MiG-29 that's instantly overpowered at the onset, we will have to implement artificial nerfs in the form of denying it more advanced weaponry that will be found on later generation variants. But before we talk about weapons, let's start with the engine. The 912 variant of the MiG-29 is fitted with a Klimov RD-33 engine outputting 81.58 kilonewtons of thrust per engine. For reference, the highest thrust output aircraft in-game is the MiG-23M's Kachaturov R-27, outputting 122 kilonewtons of thrust. If the math serves right, the MiG-29 outputs more or less 40 kilonewtons more thrust than the MiG-23. With the MiG-23 and MiG-29 almost toe-to-toe in max takeoff weight, the MiG-29 outperforms the MiG-23 in the thrust-to-weight ratio department. This means that the MiG-29 will out-accelerate the MiG-23 by a large margin. While the MiG-21 easily does this against the MiG-23, the BIS owes this to its nearly half takeoff weight, boosting its TWR. The 915 and the 29K variant are fitted with the more powerful Klimov RD-33MK engines, outputting an upgraded 88.26 kilonewtons. But the MiG-29M is actually 1,000 kilograms heavier than the 912. The MiG-29K, however, is grossly heavier at 24,500 kilograms. In the end, the MiG-29K will be a bit sluggish compared to the MiG-29M and the 912. The MiG-29 is a very maneuverable fighter. It inherits a high AOA, that of the MiG-21, while keeping the low speed maneuverability. Although proper dogfights are next to impossible in the meta, if the MiG-29 pilot has an inkling of competence plus the amount of leeway Air RB lends in the performance limits of aircraft, the MiG-29 is a very capable fighter. It's not an Su-27 that I'd call super maneuverable, although some have argued that the MiG-29 is in fact super maneuverable, but it's not a brick of an aircraft like most of the aircraft that we currently have. For the weaponry, all three aircraft have the same onboard guns, all of them utilizing the 30mm Grizia Shippuno GSH-30-1 autocannon. This means no artificial nerfing will happen in terms of the onboard gun, while there will be nerfing On the missiles, the MiG-29-912 should not have the R-73 AAMs. I think HMDs are too early to be introduced with the MiG-29-912. Rather, I propose the MiG-29A getting 2x R60M stock, with the 6x configuration unlocked with the sole R60M modification at Tier 3. If guys is feeling generous in the same case of the Harrier and the Jaguar, Tier 2. Knowing Gaijin, these stock missiles are 2x R60s, and 6x R60s will be unlocked at Tier 1, with the R60M modification at Tier 3. The MiG-29M can have the R73 and R27 with R60M stock, in the same case as the MiG-29K. But these extremely advanced weaponry will set them somewhere an entire BR or more above the MiG-29-912. Ground ordnance is more straightforward, as the 912 can only be fitted with dumb bombs and unguided rockets, to the tune of what we already see on the MiG-21 BIS. The S5, the S8, and S24 rockets with the capability to carry up to the Fab 500 bombs. The MiG-29-912 will have a lot of modifications on the outset. The MiG-29M and K will replace these dumb bombs with guided bombs, as they are fitted with the avionics to launch and control these munitions. On top of the smart bombs, the MiG-29K can carry the KH-31 and KH-35 anti-shipping missiles and the KH-31P anti-radiation missile, if Gaijin decides to one day add suppression of enemy air defenses. The MiG-29M will have these on top of the KH-29L that the Su-17M currently has. Hopefully, when this gets added, we finally get the proper laser designator mechanics instead of the sack-close mechanics the KH-29 is currently utilizing. For anyone who gets their arms up, I discussed the R-77. I've considered the R-77 for the MiG-29M, but decided against it on the basis that the missile would be too advanced for the game at the moment. If the game decides to push towards aircraft like the MiG-35, Su-30SM, F-15EX, and God forbid F-22s and F-35s, then maybe we can consider the R-77. Perhaps we could consider the R-77 as a retrofit once the game introduces AMRAAMs and Phoenixes into the mix. If those were still on Sparrows, we can have the R-77 in the back burner while we consider more and more advanced weaponry. So how will this translate into the game? For my suggestion, it's crucial to introduce the MiG-29-912 variant first, as to not become an overpowered R-27 bus, which the MiG-29S model will be. That's the first variant Gaijin decides to add, for all intents and purposes. The MiG-29-912 will be an exclusively IR missile fighter in War Thunder, with the 29M and 29K receiving the R-27 family. The gross improvement of the MiG-29 series over the MiG-23, and by the way, I'm not comparing it with the MiG-25, as the MiG-25 is still very hazy when it comes to conformation. Meanwhile, the MiG-29 will fit the current meta easier and can be implemented and quote-unquote balanced far easier than the MiG-25. Anyway, the improvement of the MiG-29 series over the MiG-23 would be countermeasures and maneuverability. The MiG-29 series will have 60 countermeasures, 30 for each pod, and its combat capability. No longer restricted to 2 all-aspect missiles, the 6 R-60Ms will be a potent enemy to face, especially when it goes toe-to-toe with its contemporary BF-16, which we will talk about in the next video. So to summarize, the MiG-29 will be after the MiG-23, or 25 if Gaijin decides to add it, with the 29K following the 912, and the 29M at the very end. The ideal BR placement of these jets would be 13.3 for the MiG-29-912, and 14.0 for the MiG-29K, and 14.7 for the MiG-29M. And at that point, I project the RP costs to be 420,000 research points at most, and 410,000 research points at least. The cost of these aircraft would be 1,050,000 Silver Lions, and crew training would be 310,000 Silver Lions. And before you say I'm not pulling these figures out of my ass, because if you notice, the MiG-21 SMT is at 390,000 research points at 1,020,000 Silver Lions, at 290,000 Silver Lions crew training costs. The MiG-21 BIS is 400,000 research points at 1.03 million Silver Lions and 300,000 Silver Lions training costs. And the MiG-23 is 400,000 research points at 1,040,000 Silver Lions and 300,000 Silver Lions training costs. And of course, I know there are weeaboos watching. The other nation that would benefit from these would be Germans. I hope to God that Gaijin doesn't make the Luftwaffe-skinned MiG-29 an event vehicle counterpart to the Tech Tree East German skinned MiG-29. However, the MiG-29 used by East Germany had HMDs and R-73 capability, but no R-27. So it should sit between the MiG-29A and MiG-29K in BR-13.7. Would be the best bet for it. But Gaijin could probably do what stupid thing they did with the F4F and create an F4F early and the F4F current model that we have, wherein you get a MiG-29 that's only R60Ms. It's MiG-29 early for East Germany, and you can get a Luftwaffe MiG-29 with R-73 capability. It's something that's really complicated to think about, but in the end, I think we could have at least 2 MiG-29 variants for Germany just to flesh out the tech tree. But I'm not really fond of talking about copy pastes. But that's more or less gonna be the fate of the German tech tree, following on the F4F. So that's how I think the MiG-29 should be added in War Thunder. I'd be happy to discuss this in the comments, and any improvements and suggestions are more than welcome. Stay tuned for the next video for the F-16 Fighting Falcon. I'll probably bounce around the nations and won't lock myself exclusively to US and USSR, but that's something I'd figure out in the future. I might be doing 7 days of 2-hour streams once this video goes up, where I tackle each tier of aviation to discuss the meta and how to perform at every tier. Thanks for watching. See you next time.